Paranormal King Radio Network at ParanormalKing.com.
Paranormal News Insider for Tuesday, August 7th, 2018, and welcome to episode number 363. This is your host, as always, Dr. Brian D. Parsons, and this week we're going a little over the edge. We got some really out there stories, and a couple of stories I really wasn't going to talk about, but they become very viral. And in that case, when something becomes very viral, I feel the need to talk about it, whether I intended to throw it to the curb anyway, because you guys are interested in that. Because if it's viral and people are talking about it, then the audience out there is more than likely interested. So I'm going to cover some of these stories tonight, which include the scary creature at the roadside behind the moose. I'm sure you've seen this video. I saw it last week when it broke. Everyone was sending it to me. I was like, okay, that's kind of silly. Well, it's been identified. We're going to talk about that tonight. So we'll also talk about Art Bell. Yeah, it was hard to talk about Art Bell the last time I talked about him, but the autopsy report has been publicly released, so we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. We're also going to talk MUFON sighting statistics for July. Yes, since we're in August. And we'll talk a little bit of ghost news, since we don't usually get a lot of ghost news. So, yeah, we'll be talking ghosts flourishing in the heat. And speaking of in the heat, a little fancy word here that let your mind wander, spectrophilia. Yeah, all these people that are suffering from this are coming out of the woodwork. And, yeah, let your minds wander on that one. Yes, we're here live on the Paranormal King Radio Network at ParanormalKing.com, and I'll be back on this same network the same time tomorrow night on the flagship show for the Paranormal King Radio Network, Paranormal King Radio. So join me tomorrow night on ParanormalKing.com tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern, and you're going to hear a little bit more about me, about the doctor, about what I do, where I've been, what I've seen, and a little less of what I think. I don't know. We'll see what we can dig up and dig into tomorrow night. But I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. And as I mentioned in the chat room, yes, you're going to get a double dose of the doctor this week. I'm looking forward to it. It's always fun to be on the other side of the mic, which I know that sounds weird. I'm always on the same side of the mic, but as a guest instead of just hosting, it's a lot of fun to switch roles sometimes. And as I always say every time at the beginning of the show, talking about paranormal conferences and conventions, these things, they're near and dear to me. Paranormal conferences and conventions, I think it's really important. If you're into the paranormal, you're into certain things, you should go and meet other people with the same interests. So I enjoy going to paranormal conferences and conventions, and I got to the point where it's been probably about a dozen years or so that I've been going to these things and speaking. So I'm really enjoy speaking at these things. So sometimes it's a little harder to go to ones as a guest, but sometimes it's actually nice just to be able to just set up a table and just talk to people and have fun talking to people. But involved in quite a few, but not until October. So I'm not going to really spend too much time talking about them right now here in August. But one that I'm really excited for, it doesn't even take place this year. Actually takes place next year. That's how excited I am about this event. That's right, the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Camping Adventure. If you've been listening to the show for a while, you probably got sick and tired of me talking about it last year and probably the year before that, but hopefully you won't get tired of it this year. Pennsylvania Bigfoot Camping Adventure. The reason why I'm talking about it right now is because tickets are going to go on sale on September 1st of 2018, and you want to get in line quickly. Get your tickets as fast as you can because they're going to sell out. And you get your tickets. Make sure you also get a place to stay very quickly. We're going to be out in the middle of nowhere, out in the woods at Benner's Meadow Run Campgrounds in Farmington, Pennsylvania. It's fairly remote. I mean, it's not completely out in the middle of nowhere, but you'll kind of feel like it a little bit. This is a big event. A lot of people are going to be speaking here. There's going to be a ton of special guests. Some friends are going to be there. Jimmy and Diane Trick from Goosebumps Paranormal. Saw them a couple of weeks ago up at Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. Butch Witkowski and Lon Strickler, who you guys are very familiar with here on the Paranormal King Radio Network, of Phantoms and Monsters. And also Sean Forker. Also going to have Colin Schneider. He's a very young cryptozoologist, radio host, public speaker, a very, very intelligent young mind. Lots of other people. Walt the Music Man Shrum. Google him. Listen to his YouTube videos. My goodness, you'll never get him out of your head. Great music, and they actually had us singing along last year. We did a couple music videos with him. It was a lot of fun. That's just the tip of the iceberg. These are some premier researchers and investigators in not only Western Pennsylvania, but also Ohio. Those are just some special guests. And some of them are going to be conducting, essentially they're going to be doing some workshops. So they're going to be learning about some stuff. Also going to be showing some movies, Invasion of Chestnut Ridge, A Wish for Giants, and a premiere movie of Finding Jay. You may wonder, well, what is Finding Jay? Who is this Jay guy? Well, Jay is none other than Jay Bachochin, who is a Wisconsin investigator. He lives pretty close to Bray Road, if you've heard of that story before, the Beast of Bray Road. Also a very, very skilled Bigfoot researcher in his own right. He and his son are going to be doing a father and son presentation. That's going to be really, really exciting. I miss Jay. I haven't seen him in, gosh, over a year now, and looking forward to hanging out with him next year, or maybe even before that, who knows. Also, Stan Gordon. Stan Gordon is a fixture of Western Pennsylvania paranormal research and investigation. He's been doing it over 5 decades, and he was around for the Kecksburg incident. He's also chronicled very heavily the Bigfoot and UFO, I don't know what word you can call it, just beyond mass hysteria. There were so many reports coming out in 1973 of Bigfoot sightings, UFO sightings. It was insane, nationally covered. And Stan was right in the middle of all this. Paul G. Johnson, Rick Fisher, Dave Spinks, David Weatherly, Seth Breedlove, Cryptozoologist of the Year for 2017. Rosemary Ellen Guiley, also Ronald Murphy Jr., Dave Drageson, Steve Coles will be there as well. And last but not least, I'll be presenting as well. Looking forward to that. Hanging out with all these guys, from the Squatch Detective to Ron Murphy, Seth Breedlove, Rick Fisher. I'll be speaking with him later this year at a conference. Just a great group of guys. I can't wait to be around all these people, because it's just so great to learn from these people. And that's why you got to get out to one of these events to learn from these guys and their experiences, and share yours as well. There's a lot of exchanging of knowledge and information that happen at these events, whether you're a researcher or not. And I'll tell you what, there's 3 weeks till tickets go on sale, and I can't wait to give some more announcements about some special guests that are going to be there. I already have an idea here what's going to happen, but I can't say anything. But I'm so excited. You're going to have to tune in to the Paranormal News Insider, or follow the PA Bigfoot Camping Adventure on Facebook, and get the up-to-the-minute report on who's going to be there, because some big announcements are going to be coming the next couple of weeks, and you're going to want to hear this. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm that excited about an event that doesn't even happen until May. May 31st of next year. It's less than a year, though. It's coming up fast. May 31st through June 2nd. 2019. Insane. It's going to be a lot of fun. And if you have any interest in any paranormal conference and convention, whether it's ghost related, UFO related, or cryptozoology related, which most of them are Bigfoot oriented, take a look. ParanewsInsider.com. Click on the events tab up there at the top. It's not the all-inclusive list. I don't have a whole lot of time to dedicate wholly to looking up all these events, but I do my best, and I think it's a pretty darn good list of conferences, conventions. But I also rely on you, the listener. If you know of some events that are happening, maybe you're going to go to one, or you're putting one on, or you've heard of one, you've seen it on Facebook, or you've seen it somewhere else, and you don't see it on my list, please help me out. I don't have time to search for everything. I don't know everything that's going on. You can email me. Let me know at insider@paranewsinsider.com, or go to paranewsinsider.com and click on the contact tab. I'd love to talk about these events, such as the 8th annual Michigan Paracon that's coming up at the end of the month, August 23rd to the 25th in Gambris, Maryland. Or I'm sorry, oh my gosh, Sault, yeah, you know where it's at. It's in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. So excited about the PA Bigfoot Camping Adventure. I can't even think about anything else here. But UFO events, got nothing going on until September. And that's in the Exeter UFO Festival, September 1st and 2nd in Exeter, New Hampshire. Not that many UFO events. A lot of them are MUFON oriented, Mutual UFO Network, which we're going to talk about here in just a couple of minutes. And of course, we have the Oregon Bigfoot Festival 2018 coming up. Granted, I have it miswritten here. It says 2017. My fault. I'll get that fixed tonight. And that's coming up in Troutdale, Oregon. I got invited to that event last year. I just couldn't make it. Would have been fun to appear on the West Coast for the first time at an event. But nonetheless, please check out this list. There's a lot of stuff there. And if you always, if you have any information about any event and you'd like me to talk about it, just let me know. I'll babble on for 10 minutes about it. I have no problem with that. I get really excited about this stuff. But you didn't come here for that, did you? You came here for the news. That's why the show is called the Paranormal News Insider, not the Paranormal Conference and Convention Insider. That would be a neat little show, I guess. But we're going to talk some baffling briefs, and this one's a little bit, kind of have to rewind a little bit here. Kind of go back to last week. I talked about the blood moon prediction, and kind of feel a little weird about this because a guy named Frank Hoogerbeets, I can't make that up. Frank Hoogerbeets, that's his name. So during this full moon event, this blood moon, he predicted that there would be a magnitude 6 or magnitude 7. Actually, he came out and said magnitude 7. Then he kind of backed it down to a magnitude 6. That would happen somewhere around the full moon. I think he said he basically gave it like a 4-day range. And there was a magnitude 6.4 earthquake that did strike in the Indonesia area. But, looking at basic math, it was well within the possibility, based on the frequency of the earthquakes of that particular magnitude. They usually happen every few days anyway, about at least one every 5.5, 6 days. So it would have fit in perfectly with that time frame. And unfortunately, I believe there were 18 people that were killed in that 6.4. But as you may have heard, since this magnitude 6.4, a very close area to where this original one happened, they were pounded with a magnitude 6.9 earthquake. And they're still suffering some aftershocks that are very, very heavy. Magnitude 5 plus in the area continue to hit that area as panicked residents and tourists are trying to flee this area. And the last time I saw an estimate yesterday afternoon, I haven't had a chance to look today, 98 people were thought to be killed. That's just horrific. And just remember, this has nothing to do with the full moon. This is just a natural event. And the fact that There was one before that, basically a precursor. No one thought that there was going to be a even larger one. Not even a week later, but the full moon was gone by then. So, I don't really think it had anything to do with it. But again, it's just really a sad and scary thing to talk about and to think about. If that were to happen closer to home, because we always think, well, these things happen on the other side of the world in Indonesia, but you never know. And that's just a lot of people that lost their lives over this kind of thing, and it is scary and extremely sad in that situation. So hopefully, anyone involved in that, especially if you're visiting there, that's got to be even worse to feel like you're stuck in this thing that you're never going to get out of. Hopefully they can get out of there soon and make it home to wherever home is. Now, to cryptid news, and I promised you this story at the top of the show, and this story got a little out of hand. And honestly, I saw the story break last week, July 29th. It was posted on Facebook and kind of went viral. It's kind of out there, and thought about it for last week's show. I had it on my list of potential things to talk about, but I actually decided I had so many stories that I nixed it. I actually erased everything, cut it out. I wish I would have covered that, but I had so many other interesting stories, as hopefully you agree. So this hit the cutting room floor. Didn't make it to the list of stories that I covered last week, but so many people have been talking about this, and it seems like it's gaining momentum, and it's become even more popular this week than it was last week. And sometimes that happens. So I talk about a lot of these stories really sometimes before they're popular, because I think they're really, really interesting. And then it's funny because I talk about it here on the show on Tuesday nights, and then Thursday or Friday I see it all over the paranormal, some of the bigger news sites and blogs, and they pick up on it a little later. So you guys are lucky on some of these stories. You're hearing them before they really break out. And that's my goal, kind of get this information out to you pretty early. But anyway, to this video that's floating around. It's not really floating around. It's on YouTube. It's actually, for what it's worth, if you watch the video, it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. There's people pull over on the side of the road, and there's a video of a moose that's grazing on the side of the road up there in Canada, where it's always snowing, right? It's always cold in Canada. I think it always snows every time you cross that border, and it just starts snowing immediately. No, just kidding. It's not that bad. No, it's not always snowing in Canada. Might be a little colder, but no, it's not that bad. Just making fun of my Canadian friends there. So anyway, this video: moose grazing, roadside, people in a probably what's a van or something, a large car. There's a few people in the car, but nobody cares about this moose grazing. No, it's becoming more famous for what is seemingly hanging out behind the moose, or up in just peeking out at this moose. Maybe it's hunting it. There's a lot of speculation as to what this thing is. There's a lot of names that I've seen attached to what this creature could potentially be. A list of names. People are making all sorts of stuff up, which is, it's kind of funny when I kind of reveal to you what the creature actually is here. Yeah. Some other people are claiming that, well, it's not a ghost, it's not a demon, it's not a mythological creature, it's not some sort of animal on the prowl to eat this moose, which that would be a pretty large carnivore to take down a large moose by itself. That's a pretty monstrous feat in and of itself. Some are claiming that it's a baby moose, a white calf moose, which is kind of, I read it from so many different people when the video first broke. Honestly, I didn't even watch it on my computer. I watched it on my phone, so I really had no idea. I was just kind of watching how popular the story had become. And I saw a few people commented on it, saying it was a white moose, including Lauren Coleman, and I tend to take his word pretty heavily. But I finally decided to watch it for myself a few days ago, and lo and behold, I spit up my mellow yellow when I saw this. I couldn't believe what I saw when I finally had it enlarged on the screen and I watched the video. And one thing I like to do is I like to just watch it, especially if it's on YouTube, slow it down. Slow it down a little bit. And ones that have audio in it too, I'll actually listen to it without watching it. So there's plenty of different things I'll do, but I watched this in slow motion and I literally spit up because I realized immediately what I was looking at. And then I scrolled through some comments and I saw a lot of other people on that YouTube video that they got it too. It wasn't a huge mystery to a lot of people, I guess. I'm not breaking the story by any means. I'm not the first one to say this about this, but I can say beyond the shadow of a doubt, looking at this video and analyzing it, that I agree with this. But unfortunately it took me a few days. When it first broke, I didn't take it seriously. I didn't think there was anything there. I just was reading about it. Didn't really watch the video for myself because, again, I nixed the story. Didn't really care that much about it till this week when I have so many people sharing with me and wanting me to talk about it or give my opinion about it. And I did find the source video. It's titled "Mysterious Creature in the Woods." And the original has over 440,000 views. But more importantly, if you look at the information behind the video, there's also a license attached to it. So this person's getting money for when this story is actually talked about in the media. And whenever the video is shared with the media, this person's getting a little kickback, getting a little check in the mail. And it's beyond just making money from commercials attached to a YouTube account. This is actually, this company's probably giving them a decent check. So you wonder what the motive is here. So again, I watched it full screen on my computer, and first I watched it at full speed. And I'm like, that doesn't look right. It doesn't look normal. So I went back and I watched it in slow motion. And my head went back. I had to get kind of set back up, and I'm like, did I see what I think I saw? And I rewound it. I just clicked back and I watched that part again. I'm like, my goodness, for real? That's all this thing is? Yeah, the video, it seems, is not a strange creature in the background. But no offense to anybody, if you think you saw that, that's fine, because it's an illusion. And it's an illusion that's been fooling people on the internet for years. Believe me, this is not the first time. I can honestly, when I first saw this, the first thought in my mind was one of my favorite ghost videos of all time that I share when I talk about ghosts and ghost videos and viral aspects of ghosts and subsequent ghost videos. It's about at least 10 years old. And when you're watching this, it's shooting through the windshield of a car. So hint, hint, nudge, nudge on that one. You're watching the car go down the road, and this road is lined with the trees. And the car there's kind of like a little mini S-curve that the car's about ready to go through. And all of a sudden, there appears to be this ghost that moves from the right to the left in front of the car. It's like a hazy, see-through ghost. It's amazing. It astounded people. They saw this ghost moving across the road. But it wasn't a ghost. Unless it was the ghost of a bug. Because this was nothing more than a smudge on the windshield that was actually going in and out of focus. And the reason why it looked like it was crossing the road is because the car was moving. And the camera was sitting still. So the background was moving. And so this out of focus thing that looked like this ghost was moving across the screen. And the camera at the time was fighting to stay in focus. That's how that one was busted so easily. And I do have that YouTube link if you want to be nostalgic like I was. I had to find it right away and watch it for giggles, just for giggles, nothing else. I had to search for it. It's not really. I think this is the best quality, and there's like it's kind of like a music video almost attached to this one. But I love this one. I thought it was awesome. Probably again one of my favorite ghost videos of all time. But back to this moose creature, moose stalker, whatever you want to call it. Again, I've seen a bunch of different names that people have called this thing. In all honesty, what we're seeing is the exact same thing. It's a little harder to detect because the video is being shot kind of diagonal to the windshield, and there's a little less blurry focus, out of focus kind of stuff. But there's enough detail that if you pay attention, you can see this yourself. And I think once you see it, now that I'm telling you what it is, it's kind of one of those things that once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. I'm sure you've seen those memes or those stories that try to hook you on the internet by saying that. And I think once you realize that and you'll take another look at this video, you're going to see what I saw and you're going to realize, wow, I was duped. But again, no big deal because this happens quite a bit. And if you carefully watch, there's kind of a dashboard reflection there on the left-hand side. If you watch that spot and the spot where this mysterious creature is supposed to be, those two spots never actually move away from each other. They're fixed in their spatial area. So they're not moving away from each other or toward each other. It's fixed. So that's how you know that this isn't a creature moving in and out of the woods. This camera moves left and right, moves, kind of dances around a little bit. It's nothing more than a movement of the camera. It's not a creature moving. It's the camera moving and moving around on the smudge. I think it's more than likely a cell phone camera. And it's, again, there's a lot of other videos that are out there, a number of them. And actually, one that I put on was actually in my latest book, Handbook for the Amateur UFO Researcher, where there was a kind of a chunk taken out of somebody's windshield, and they were sitting at a stoplight, and they zoomed out with the camera, which made this amazing. Well, I shouldn't have told you what it was first, but it looked like a UFO hanging there in the sky. And when the light turned green, the camera panned back, and the car moved forward, and it made this UFO look like it zoomed off in the distance, but it was really just a crack in the windshield. I should say a big chunk taken out of the windshield. It was a lot of people fell for it. It was just a joke, but a lot of people thought that this was actually a UFO, and so I put that picture of this fake UFO in my book, and I thought it was really interesting. And a quote from the comments. If you look at the original YouTube and you go through the comments, there's further evidence that kind of adds up against this being some sort of creature. One of the women in the video says, quote, "I was in the car with the girl who took the video." So it was a younger girl in the front, I guess, that took the video. "My boyfriend was driving. We never saw anything moving in the wood." And this is a quote. This isn't me. Not having a breakdown or anything. "And the car was parked on the side of the road to let my daughter look at the moose. I was very surprised when I saw her video," unquote. So they never saw anything. And that's another hint there that if people are filming something wondrous, but yet they don't see it in person, there's probably another explanation for this. And you'll see this a lot in videos where there's reflections of lights in a glass. Anytime there's anything between the camera and the object, if there's glass or windshield, always have to think about that. You should always consider that information being there. UFO videos, plenty of these cases. Another one that made my latest book was the light. You know how your gauges have light in them? You know, your speedometer and all that stuff, your gas. Well, this woman claimed that she was chasing around a UFO, and she had the pictures to prove it, but it was nothing more than a reflection of her gauges, because once we figured out what the car was, well, not we, but researchers, people that were looking at these pictures, figured out what kind of car it was. They easily matched this reflection with that vehicle, and boom, that was busted. But again, if you just look at the area where the dashboard reflection is, and you keep an eye on this spot, there's also another smudge higher up on the windshield. And if you kind of just watch those two dance back and forth, they never move away from each other. It's a consistent distance, so we know that it's just something on the windshield. Now, had they been outside with no windshield, running across the street like that crazy guy with the bison, which I never recommend that. Don't do that. Wild animals are wild. Even parking your car next to the side of the road. I tell you, a moose can mess you up. They get territorial. They don't have very good vision. They'll charge you. And even if you're in your car, that can cause a lot of damage. It's pretty cool to see one, though. Don't get me wrong. They're really neat. They're really big. But they can be really dangerous as well. But, when I saw this and I kind of figured this out, I wanted to see if other people had also came to this conclusion. So again, no moose, calf, no creature, only a dead bug causing confusion. And I went over to my friends over at metabunk.org, and they come to the same conclusion. And they did some great work with that, figuring that out as well. And I'll throw that link in the chat room. And if you're not listening live and you're not getting these links in the chat room as I'm throwing them in there, don't worry. Because throughout the week, through the Paranormal News Insider Facebook page, which is connected to the Paranormal News Insider Twitter page, I'll be putting these links out there, and you can look at them yourself. And yeah, there's a lot of links set out there that are pretty popular links to these stories. But a lot of times I have links that go back to some of the original information, or information that wasn't used in the telephone game of sometimes happens through the media or paranormal news, where people add their own 2 cents and change the story a little bit, trying to get the raw information to you. And sometimes other links like this metabunk.org link that isn't really being put out there too much. And in case you haven't seen it, I'll also, in the chat room there, I'll put the original link to the original video on YouTube about this scary monster in the woods that's nothing more than a dead bug. I guess bugs could be ghosts. I don't think they're going to stalk and hunt and kill moose, but what do I know? What do I know? So that's your cryptid news for the week. And we're going to jump into UFO news. A couple of interesting news stories here in UFO news. And I'll go ahead and talk about, might as well put Art Bell in here. I'll get this, put this story here before I get into the MUFON sighting statistics. This story originally hit the paranormal world like a hammer. I know, to me, it wasn't surprising, because I knew that Art Bell had been battling a lot of physical issues over the years. But a lot of people were shocked. They were just, they didn't know what to think. And a lot of paranormal groups paid homage to Art Bell, and a lot of paranormal radio shows also basically suspended all of their whatever they were doing that night or that week, and spent a lot of time talking about Art Bell, who passed away back in Friday the 13th, April 13th. He was 72 years old. And yeah, it was shocking to everybody. And anyone who's listened to Coast AM, during his tenure, a lot of famous people were tweeting about this and talking about Art Bell. So it was beyond just the paranormal world. So a lot of people were talking about this story. And we hadn't heard anything for a while, and all of a sudden now, the Nye County Sheriff, Sheriff Worley's office, released a Facebook post about the autopsy reports, exactly the same way that his death was reported, via a Facebook video post. The official autopsy report was released on August 1st by Clark County Coroner John Fudenberg, who is based in Las Vegas. The official ruling is an accidental overdose caused by, quote, multiple drug intoxication from his own lawful prescribed prescriptions, unquote. So Art Bell had a combination of painkillers, a sedative, muscle relaxant, all in his system at the same time. And, unfortunately, this happens. And to make things worse, Bell had been suffering from high blood pressure as well as a lung disease. And, a lot of people knew that he had had a lot of other medical conditions over the years. And so, it's not completely uncommon for a concoction like this to sometimes take over, your body and just cause it to shut down. It's sad, and it happens actually quite a bit. Sometimes these things make people linger probably longer than they would live naturally, which is, why they take them, but can also, make the body eventually shut down from these types of things. And it's still sad, though. And when this broke, I had a fear this was going to happen, and it happened. A lot of people came out crying conspiracy, that the government killed him, and that this was a cover-up and a lie, and all these other things were coming out again. It's like, I mean, that's a great way to think of him, right? It's kind of heroic, if we think that Art Bell went out that way, that all the things that he feared came back to take his life. But in reality, it was his body and the concoction of medication that took his life. And, we shouldn't harp on this. We shouldn't think about, how he died. We should remember him, how he lived, and how he impacted so many people in the paranormal. I know I listened to the show long before I even cared about the paranormal, and probably was a bridge for me to come over to this side of the belief system, to come over here and to really dig into what is going on. I think he influenced a lot of people, and he was a very, very good entertainer, and I think we should remember him that way, rather than talking about some sort of conspiracy theory that really has no merit to it. And in case you haven't seen that, well, I'll throw the Facebook linkage in there so you can see that as well. And in case you haven't seen it, but I'm sure it's made its rounds. It's out there. It's all over the place. And yep, that didn't work. So I'm going to post it that way. There we go. And that didn't work either. I know why. I know why. Don't tell me. I figured this out last week. Okay. So yeah, it's always fun here in the chat room. And the love of live radio. Things always go wrong, it seems like. But yeah, that's one half of the UFO news. I guess it's UFO news. It's associated with UFOs. Anyway, the Mutual UFO Network, or MUFON, well, they release their monthly sighting reports on UFOs, and I like to talk about them as much as possible. I think it's an interesting thing to talk about. They're one of the world's largest organizations that gathers UFO sighting information. So I think it's useful to kind of disseminate that and to talk about it. I mean, is it really statistically worthwhile? Probably not. But I think it's interesting as far as gathering information on UFO sightings that are happening here on Earth. I think it's probably the most important aspect that we can talk about. So MUFON's released their sighting statistics for July. And obviously we're in August, so those are still accumulating. And taking a look at the June numbers, kind of looking back here, there was 548 total worldwide sightings, with 364 right here in the United States. And these numbers, strangely, were nearly identical to those gathered in February and April of this year, only off by a little bit, not much. It's kind of weird. Now, the month of May saw the second highest worldwide sightings number, with 678 for this year, and only January being higher with 690 reports. And the United States saw 446, which was tied with March for the second highest number of the year, and second to January's 495 sightings. So last month, July, we saw the highest totals of the year with 757 total worldwide sightings. And this represents the largest number of UFO reports gathered by MUFON since August of 2017, when there were 821 total worldwide sightings. And July of 2017 had 785. So a little bit dip from last year, last year's number. But the United States this year saw 497 sightings, which represents the highest number of sightings in a month since December of 2017, with 507 U.S. sightings. And for July of this year, after the 497 U.S. sightings, the United Kingdom was second with 78 sightings. Canada was third with 62. France was next with 24. Brazil had 8. Germany and Australia had 7 each, and Portugal had 6. And there was an impressive 44 other countries that turned in 4 or less reports, with 28 of those turning in only 1 report each. And a couple things I want to clarify here, in case you were wondering. Yes, every month, I take a guess. My guess for July was 589 total worldwide sightings, which was an increase over June's numbers. And my total, or I should say my U.S. sightings, was 377. And obviously, I was not even close. I don't know. There for a while, I was like spot on. It was scary how close I was. Now it's like not even close. Like I'm not even in the same universe as the 757 and 497, respectively, worldwide sightings, U.S. sightings. But we'll see. We'll see. The other is, how are these cases really put into this? Well, these are just the cases that were entered into their case management system, their CMS. So this is where all the researchers have access to the case management system, and they upload these reports. Now, this is just the time frame in which these reports were uploaded into the CMS. It doesn't mean that they actually happened in that month time frame. So there could be a case that happened in June of this year. There could be a case that happened in 1980, put in last month's reports. And not all these cases are thoroughly investigated or thoroughly reviewed. Some of these sightings could be multiple sightings of the same event. A lot could be single events. That's why, I don't take this as some sort of statistical analysis of actual UFO sightings, because there's a lot of things in this that I guess you could say make it not as scientifically accurate as you would think. It sounds like we can say that there was this many sightings in this state and that country during this time. That doesn't actually mean that they happened in that time frame, and it doesn't actually mean that there were actual UFOs. These could be explainable things. These could be rocket launches that were reported as UFOs. And again, some of these reports might have happened years ago. They just finally got around to putting them in as a report, or contacting somebody from MUFON who therein put it into the case management system. So hopefully that kind of clarifies a little bit about that. And that's why it's not, you can't take this as specific statistical information and determine that one state should be under a UFO watch or anything like that. MUFON used to do stuff like that, but I think they realized that some of these reports maybe are not as meaningful as what they're interpreted as. And they've talked for years about revamping their case management system and reorganizing things in a different way. But it's still, every time I go into the CMS system, it's the same thing. And I don't know. Hopefully they can change it. But it's still, either way, I think it's really, really interesting when you're talking about UFOs and UFO reports to look at these case sightings and to kind of look at them through this methodology. There's no other way to stack up this many UFO reports. Granted, again, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of these that are explainable. A lot of these are misinterpretations. Some of these are probably hoaxed sightings or wishful thinking, or maybe people that were maybe under the influence of something. I don't know how to put that nicely. So you never know what's actually being reported here unless you really dig through the case management system, which would take a long time. And I could do it if this is the only thing I was doing. It's a lot of information to digest. But anyway, hopefully that explains a little bit. With the 497 U.S. sighting reports turned into MUFON and their case management system last month, July, California topped the list with 59. And again, this is to be expected. California should have the most sightings, and not because it's the UFO capital of the United States, but because it has the highest population of any state. So statistically speaking, it should have the most number of sightings. And if it doesn't, then that's something that we need to look at. Obviously, that's a little bit of a red flag there, either positively or negatively. Positively for another state. Florida was second with 34 sightings. Washington State, surprisingly, and we'll look at this, we'll analyze this a little closer, they were third with 29 sightings. I should say 29 reports. Texas was fourth with 27. Oregon was tied with New York with 23 sightings each. Pennsylvania had 22. Michigan had 21. Ohio had 17. Missouri turned in 15. Kentucky had 14. Then we had Nevada, Arizona, and New Jersey with 13 each. Virginia and Wisconsin had 12 each, and Georgia and Idaho turned in 10 reports each. 27 other states turned in 9 or less reports, with just 2, Connecticut and Vermont, turning in 1 report each. And I like to break this down even further. This is something that MUFON used to do, but I guess maybe they didn't feel that this is worthy to do. I think it's interesting because it's one thing for me to spout out these numbers and say, well, California had 59 and Washington had an amazing 29 this month. But what does all that mean? How do you break that down? Well, the best way to do that is to break it down per capita. So how many sightings per how many people? And it's translated, unfortunately, to a percentage. And I use the traditional 100,000 people. I could do it in a different way to get a more astounding number. But 100,000 people is the pretty much average for any kind of per capita statistical methodology that I'm familiar with. And I believe that's how MUFON used to do it. If you get any higher, it's kind of like cheating. I could do it like per 500,000 people, but I've kind of toyed around with that. But since I've been doing 100,000 for so long, probably not going to change that. So we look at July and we look at the U.S. population. So again, the total number of reports for the United States in July was 497. And if you look at the U.S. population, 497 sightings, that translates to a 0.156 per 100,000 people in the United States. So a percentage, a fraction. So 0.156, not even close to a quarter of a person. I guess 15% of a person. Is that like an arm? I guess on the average person. Then we look at California. Because again, California is number 1 in state population. And they also had the number 1 most sightings this last month as well. 59 sightings. But that translates only to a 0.15. So they're below the U.S. average by 6 thousandths, which isn't that much. But still, they're below the average, even though they led the United States in sighting numbers. So this is when it starts to put things in perspective for you. So Florida is number 3 in state population. And they had 34 sightings, but they turned in a 0.165 per capita. So 0.165 of a person per 100,000 people turned in a UFO report in the month of July to MUFON. Then we head to Washington. Way down there, number 13 in state population. They had 29 sightings, which is pretty high for them. They turned in a .398. So almost 40% of a person per 100,000 people. I guess you could say 1 out of every 300,000 people, slightly over that, turned in a UFO report. And so you can see how that reflects against other states. So higher percentage per capita there versus California or Florida. And then we go to Oregon, number 27 in state population. They turned in 23 reports. But since they're so low in state population, again, 27th, their per capita number was .562. So pretty significant there. I guess 1 in every 200,000 people, I suppose that would be the right number. And it's pretty high with 23 sightings. I'm thinking, I didn't pick a winner, but I'm going to say that Oregon is the winner this month. Kind of wanted it to be Washington since I love Washington State, but I'm going to have to go with Oregon this month. Kentucky, well, they're 26th in state population. They had 14 sightings, a .315, double the average, U.S. average, but paling in comparison to Oregon and Washington. Nevada, number 34 in state population, they turned in 13 reports, but they scored a .442. So, .442. So 44% of a person per 100,000 people in the state reported a UFO sighting. Idaho is number 39 in state population, way down there. They only had 10 reports, but still turned in a whopping .594. It's impressive. But then we go to Maine, state of Maine, all the way down there, number 42 in state population, and they only had 8 sightings. But with that, they turned in a .6. .6. That's the highest of any state that month, but only 8 sightings. So to me, granted, it's pretty high in per capita, but the number, 23 is a pretty good number. Granted, we're still looking at the per capita number, but I think it's impressive to have that many UFO sightings. Wyoming, number 50. Yes, they're dead last in state population, and they only had 2 sightings, but still with those 2 sightings, a .341 per capita. I think it's impressive. So thank you, Wyoming. And like I said, MUFON used to break all this stuff down, but I think they kind of they realize it's not statistically relevant. But I like to do it because then, even though it's fractions, it's percentages, you should say, it still, to me, kind of maps it out a little bit. So you can kind of get a better feel for what state is actually a little bit more important than another state. Numbers don't lie. Statistics don't lie. Statistics, unlike people, it tells the truth, and you can't argue that. The proof is in the numbers. And the proof is in the numbers. Well, thinking about it, August, gotta have to make a prediction, right? Even though I know I'm going to be wrong, still going to make a prediction for August. I'm going to go with, let's see. I know I'm going to be wrong, but I'm going to guess. Here it is. I'm going to go with 623 total worldwide sightings and 409 U.S. sightings. Make sure I get this written down. 623 and 409. There it is. So we'll see. We'll see. And that's your UFO news for the week here on the Paranormal News Insider. We got some ghost stories to cover real quick with you. Now, tomorrow night, live, right here on the Paranormal King Radio Network at paranormalking.com, I'll be here, back again. And I'll be on the Paranormal King Radio Show. And I'll be talking about my life and times as an anomalous researcher, and essentially all 3 of the paranormal fields. But I did get my start in the ghost field. And one place I had the pleasure to investigate was Bobby Mackey's. Bobby Mackey's Music World. It's in Wilder, Kentucky, which is just over the border from Ohio. And I remember this vividly. I was in the middle of June, and it was probably in the mid to high 90s, I think, during the day. When we got there, we scouted the area. We talked to some people that were kind of linked to this area to kind of get some background information as to Bobby Mackey's and some of the stories that were attributed to some of the events that happened there. I'm sure if you've ever investigated there, or you've researched this, you kind of know what I'm talking about. So we talked to a lot of people attached to this location and some of the history of it. But man, it was hot. It was hot. And we went to the area, we took some pictures, and then we came in and we set up the early evening, set up some stuff in the location. And nightfall, well, you'd think it would cool off a little bit. But no. Now it was in the cool and comfortable low 90s. Probably got to the high 80s, I think, overnight when we were still there. But my gosh, inside it was like being inside an oven. It was in the 90s. All of our equipment was jam-packed into one room. And it was the same room that had one tiny air conditioner in it. The only air conditioner in the entire building. And if you've ever been in there, it's where the game room is. And we had all of our equipment running in there. So I'm sure that didn't help the heat situation that much. And I don't know, we didn't see anything really spectacular because of the heat or anything like that. But a lot of investigators, they'll talk about the weather and what weather has any sort of effect on ghosts. But you know what? The folks in the United Kingdom, there's a group out there that seems like, well, they've got it all figured out. A group in the Cornwall County area of England states that the current heat wave that they have brewing over there has caused ghost cases to spike. A group called Plymouth Paranormal Investigators, led by Gary Parsons, who is of no relation, he states that, quote, "We have received a major spike in the number of calls during June and July with people reporting scary supernatural phenomena and one couple almost afraid to go into their own home because of poltergeists and residual energies making things move," unquote. So how did they come to this conclusion? How did they come up to this thing to say, well, since it's hot out, we're getting more cases? And are there any facts to back this claim up? Well, I can answer that real quick. Nope. But one member, Robert Bryant, feels the same way, as he states, quote, "With temperatures soaring, it's having an unexplained increase in paranormal activities," unquote. I'm not sure that they understand that correlation does not mean correlate, or correlation does not mean causation. Just because it's hot out and maybe you're getting more cases, well, it doesn't mean that the two are actually interrelated. Maybe it's because you're all over the news and you're getting stories written about you that you're getting more cases, and you're holding some events that you're advertising for all over Facebook and all over the internet. Maybe that's why you're getting more cases. Publicity. Oh. Anyway, other than the spike in cases, Brian adds that other things have pulled them towards this conclusion, as he states, quote, "On a recent house investigation, my body was taken over by a dead priest and refused to leave until it was ordered to leave by my colleague, Amanda Oriana," unquote. Okay. And of course, there are experts. They're experts because they're armed with the latest methods of ghost detection. That's what the story says. These are experts because they have tools and technology. Bryant adds, quote, "We use a number of items to communicate with energies, and especially our Huff Wonder Box. It is designed to search out unexplained orb lights, eerie voices, and deadly spirits," unquote. Well, I'm really not sure about unexplained orb lights with the Huff Wonder Box. I have no idea what that correlation is. But, you know, You know that Huff guy that I talked about a few weeks ago that was caught outright lying about his EVP work, got caught and exposed by various members of the ghost field? Yeah, that guy got exposed as a fraud by a lot of different people. That guy designed this box, or at least put his name on the box. He didn't really design it. Um, let me get on my box here, my soapbox. Tools do not equal science, and speculation does not equal facts. If heat made ghost activity higher, we would expect to see a lot more evidence of this, but we don't. Cases all over the world would spike, and we would all be running around dealing with cases every time there was a heat wave. But just like the full moon, I don't see any correlation with it causing any kind of weird activity during that time frame. But lastly, one word of advice that I learned years ago before I really kind of came out to the public about what I did, is that if you want the press to expose you for what you do, the press will expose you for what you are. Believe me. Yeah. So Bobby Mackey's, yes, it's by water. It's a decent river, but it's kind of far away. You'd have to throw a rock pretty far to hit that water, and there's not a whole lot of other haunted locations along that river that I'm aware of. And a lot of the Bobby Mackey stories, well, let's just say they're highly debatable by people that were actually involved. I'm not saying personally, saying they're debatable, but other people doubt the validity of those stories. But still kind of cool to investigate there. Probably not the safest building to be in, but we'll leave it right there. Now to the last, but certainly not least story. I wasn't even going to talk about this one, but you know what? This is spreading like wildfire. Got to talk about this. Let me throw the link in the chat room again. Don't worry if you're not listening live. Shame on you if you're not listening live, or you're listening live, but not actually in the chat room. Don't worry. All these stories, I mean, obviously you can listen to the show again as a podcast, but also you can catch all these links throughout the week as I post them on Facebook and Twitter, and you'll be all caught up to date, so don't worry about that. But last but not least, again, this story, I don't know. This was hard to even contemplate talking about, but I guess it's worth it. It's entertaining, and a lot of people are talking about this. This is very viral, especially in the United Kingdom, where this originates. A woman who is a self-proclaimed spiritual counselor has made herself public by appearing on daily talk shows in the United Kingdom. Her claim to fame? Well, first of all, she claims to have frequent, relations with ghosts. And if you know what I mean by relations, I'm not talking about playing canasta. The 30-year-old woman who goes by the name Amethyst Realm, I don't know if that's her stage name or what, she says she first had sex with a ghost when she was engaged to a real person, a real man. Apparently, it was this jealousy of this ghost being in the mix, I guess, that drove her fiance away. Well, granted, that's her side of the story, but I'm sure there's a lot more to it. Now, this apparently was about 11 years ago, and since then, she claims to have been with 20 ghosts and no longer desires any sort of relationship with physical men. And she states her first ghostly relationship lasted about 3 years. And despite having physical feelings, well, we'll leave the description at physical feelings, if you know what I mean. A woman having physical feelings with the ghost. I don't think you have to think too far. During the act, I think I spelled it out enough. She says that she's actually not even 100% sure that these ghosts are actually men. Puts a nice little twist to it, right? Well, this part of the story actually broke last December. Now it's getting a lot of attention because of a part 2 to this story which just broke now. And I don't know why this lady would wait all this time to kind of make this announcement or make this kind of thing. Well, I kind of have a few guesses. Yeah, so the first part of the story sounds crazy. And when the story broke last year, it's kind of funny because she's supposedly been with this one spirit for over a year now. But back then, if you read the stories from December, early December, she claimed 15 ghosts that she'd been with. Now that number is 20. But she claims that she's only been with this one for a year. I don't know. Maybe I'm bad at math. I mean, I just did a lot of statistics on UFO sightings, but I don't think I'm that bad at math. But anyway, this first part of the story, yes, it sounds completely crazy. And the reason why this story is back in the news, well, it's really crazy. Amethyst now claims that her lover, her ghost lover, which is someone that she met while in Australia sometime last year, and it apparently followed her home all the way to the United Kingdom. I don't know if it had a plane ticket. She bought a seat for him. I don't know how that works. Put it in her luggage. I don't know how that works. I don't know how any of this works. I would have to ask her all these questions. Well, her ghost lover and her are now discussing, in air quotes, you didn't see the air quotes, discussing having a baby together. That's right. A ghost baby is in the works. Wow. Amethyst believes that ghost pregnancy is possible, but since our minds can't process this thought, the baby never comes to term. So she says she's working on this problem, but still hasn't figured it out yet. I mean, I hate to break it to her, but I think she's got a few other issues that she needs to sort out first. I'm not calling her crazy. I just think that there's some other issues here that maybe she needs to process before getting married to a ghost or having a baby with a ghost. And there's actually a technical term for this. You might not have heard of this. You might have heard of it. But yes, spectrophilia. It's an actual thing. It might be something that somebody might want to talk to a professional about. Granted, there's no classification as far as some sort of psychosis with spectrophilia, but I'm sure that there's some other underlying issues here. And what's weird about this is that stories of what seems like mostly women have appeared more and more frequently in the news, especially in the United Kingdom in the last couple of years. And it seems like it is becoming pretty in vogue for women to do. And I guess we can thank Demi Moore for that one, right? Now, even more stranger yet is that another story dealing with spectrophilia broke earlier this year. You might remember me talking about this one. A woman named Amanda Teague, who claims to not only have had sex with a ghost named Jack, which is weird. Just remember the name Jack there for a second, but married him as well on a ship in international waters. So it's not even legal. And the thing with Jack is, Jack Teague, because she changed her last name. Well, she's also a Captain Jack Sparrow impersonator in her spare time. There's a little bit of kind of mishap with this story. And what's really cool is after I talked about this story, she started following me on Twitter, which is really cool. So yes, some will claim that this is the devil or an incubus. But I'm thinking these people are probably tied to personal issues. But then again, it's becoming kind of almost a way to express oneself nowadays. I think it's beyond maybe a psychological issue to just kind of a way of life for some people. It's kind of crazy to some of us as it sounds. Yeah, but I think some of this is personal issues, but more rather than complicated relationships with the dead. But that's just my opinion. And as far as phantom pregnancies go, which is what she's talking about here, I've only heard of a few. Some that happened in Star Wars and some guy that lived over 2,000 years ago. I don't know. I wasn't there. So she pulls this off. I think it's going to completely change everything that we know about life itself. And with that, don't forget, I'll be right here at the same network, the same time tomorrow, ParanormalKing.com on the Paranormal King radio show with you. And as always, You'll also hear me next week. But for now, keep your eyes in the skies, your ears in the woods, the hair standing on the back of your neck, and always keep your mind slightly ajar. Don't let your brains fall out. And above all else, don't stop believing. For the Paranormal News Insider, this is Dr. Brian D. Parsons reporting.